the fastest production version of a high-performance European, and two fast versions of low-priced Japanese sedans. We drive them all, next on Motor Week.
Motor Week, television's automotive magazine, is proudly brought to you by Prestone Antifreeze and Coolant and by Prestone Super Flush Products. Your host for Motor Week, John Davis.
Hello and welcome again to Motor Week. We're here in Jacksonville, Florida, one of the nation's major ports of entry for cars. All of our road test subjects this time are imports, and they also share a talent for going fast and doing all the other things we expect from cars that have the pretense of performance. This time we'll show you the latest Porsche, the 928 S4, and turbocharged versions of two Japanese front-drive Chevrolets, the Turbo Sprint and Turbo Spectrum. Pat Goss is standing by to answer a couple of viewer letters, and Beth Nardone will report on some new electronic technology from Ford. And we'll also check in on our fleet of long-term test cars. But first, we'll take a look at a car that's been around for 10 years now, the Porsche 928. In its current incarnation, it's called the 928 S4. That 4 stands for fourth generation, and that designation means a lot of small changes. For one thing, the 928 S4 is now the fastest of all the Porsche models sold in the United States. That's faster even than the legendary 911 Turbo. And that's our cue to consider the 928 S4 in a whole new light. And to do that, we drove our 928 S4 to Savannah, Georgia, and the twisty Roebling Road racecourse for sporting evaluation. But before we smoke the tires and start our stopwatches, we thought we'd update our Porsche Spotter's Guide. You can identify the 928 S4 by its new front bumper spoiler that carries fog and driving lamps. And underneath you'll find a new belly pan that helps smooth airflow too. At the rear there's a bumper with bigger taillights and a larger wing-type spoiler for improved stability. The overall result of this year's revisions is less drag, a coefficient of 0.34 versus 0.39 for last year's 928S. Not bad for a car that's still, to be polite, broad of beam. But the S4's girth is part of what makes it so pleasant and comfortable inside. Here, little has changed. Porsche's main additions are an inflatable bladder for lumbar support and 3-position memory for the mirror and seat adjustments. It's called Positrol, and it's optional. But as before, all other controls are at your fingertips. And the S4's 5-speed shifter still has that race car shift pattern, with first gear down and to the left. Combine that with a slight vagueness, and it's no wonder that 80% of 928 buyers opt for the 4-speed automatic. Otherwise, the cabin will accommodate almost anyone's needs. As before, the steering wheel adjusts for rake and takes the gauges with it. So the car's full instrumentation is never blocked by the steering wheel. As for cargo space, it's shallow, but there's still plenty of room for golf clubs. And the rear jump seats, which aren't really good for people, fold flat to make for more luggage space than anyone is likely to use in a sports car. The S4 has something else in a quantity that most drivers aren't likely to use: power. Porsche engineers redesigned the induction system and came up with 10% more horsepower. The total stands at 316 for this 4-valve per cylinder 5-liter V8. Torque is up too, now at 317 pound-feet. But that's only part of the story. The 928 S4 delivers its power over a broader range of engine speed, which means the new 928 is much different than the one we tested 2 years ago. Power comes on quicker. There's no sensation of waiting for the revs to build before you go. We managed a 0 to 60 sprint of just 6.2 seconds and went through the quarter mile in 14.6 seconds at 98 miles per hour. Fast. But Porsche's figures are a half-second faster on both counts. We attribute the difference to our high-mileage car's worn clutch. The S4 gets bigger rear tires to go with its newfound power, and they also helped in handling. past 928s could be a little scary for the uninitiated, because when you lift off the gas in a high-speed turn, the rear end would come around promptly. The 928 S4 now plows mildly when you go into a turn, and when you lift your foot off the gas, the tail now reacts in a more good-natured fashion. Plus, when it starts to swing, the new S4 will recover nicely with just a bit of countersteer. This is a moot point for most drivers since the car's cornering limits are too high to exceed in everyday driving. But it's good to know that it's harder to get in over your head in the 928 S4. Overall, the S4 is crisp and nimble in corners once you get over its wide and heavy feel. Highway ride is firm but resilient on rougher surfaces. And if you haven't been working out in a spa, you'll find the steering a touch heavy too. But that makes the 928 S4 feel very stable at high speed. We ran out of racetrack before we got our car to its advertised 165 mile/hour top speed. But just for the record, race driver Al Holbert managed 171 and change in the flying mile using the wide open spaces of the Bonneville Salt Flats. Now, if that doesn't impress you, the S4's brakes probably will. They're anti-skid units now, and they pulled our test car down from 55 with a short 110-foot average. Porsche claims the car will go from 0 to 60 and back to 0 in under 10 seconds. The Porsche 928 S4 is EPA rated at 15 city, 23 highway. Our car's best was 18 in everyday driving. Not bad, but you still have to pay a $650 gas guzzler tax. Add that to a base price of $61,845. Porsche raised the price partly to boost the resale value of used 928s, thereby keeping them from competing with new 944. But even with that lofty price, the S4 is cheaper than some cars in its class, and now it outperforms them too. So it's improved acceleration that tops our list of hits, followed by improved handling and braking. We also like the new front and rear end treatments. They give the car a less bulbous appearance. On the miss side, we think the 5-speed manual shifter is a little vague. Until you get used to it, it's easy to go into fourth when you want second. And some of our staff members didn't like the rear wing spoiler, saying it spoiled the car's overall slick looks. In safety matters, the S4 passes with halogen headlamps, radial tires, and 5-mile-per-hour bumpers. It fails to have front passive restraints or rear shoulder belts, although rear seat room is so minimal they likely wouldn't be used even if they were there. Despite its luxury and lofty price, the 928 has always been a stepchild in the Porsche line, maybe because it didn't have its engine in the rear like traditional Porsches. And there were less expensive models that overall performed nearly as well. But now Porsche has made the 928 S4 their all-around best performing car. We figure it's a trend that can only continue. So there's just no telling what the engineers will think up for the 5th generation 928.